I'm trying to think, where do I begin? I'm a massive consumer of content on YouTube. I drive a truck. I'm able to listen all day. I try to listen to both sides of the aisle as much as I can to have an informed opinion. I understand the trappings of listening to one side of any argument and one side exclusively, and that it can lead you into a trap, an echo chamber, an unbreakable, unpenetrable wall of cognitive dissonance that you can't get out of. Example, the Chris Williamson interview with David Pakman. David Pakman comes on his show, says it's important to reach out to the other side of the aisle to avoid cognitive dissonance. I'm willing to hear the guy out. I'm willing to hear anyone out. I'll listen to anyone on any podcast. And then in the same breath, he says, I've never heard the Black Lives Matter protest described as a riot. That's the point where I'm like, this man is either stupid or clearly lying, or his cognitive dissonance is so thick that You ever hear the metaphor about the Aztecs seeing the Spanish conquistadors' ships in the ocean and not being able to recognize them? Well, that's a bullshit line. But the metaphor is true, factually false, metaphorically true. Future Steel again. It's gotten substantially more noisy, so I'm going to keep this brief. I rewatched the David Pakman interview with Chris Williamson. It's not cognitive dissonance. He's covering for his corporate buddies. That's my opinion. It's not a statement of fact. Here's the clip. This is editing Steel with his face. And put the face up there. One other anecdote about David Pakman. Not trying to make it a personal attack or screw David Pakman video, but it's something that personally bugs me. When they were going after Joe Rogan for medical and for misinformation on SARS-CoV-2, what's the difference between conspiracy theory and the news about 3 months? Joe Rogan in the past had spoken up in defense of David Pakman because he got canceled because of some social media tweet where he said something about Israel, which, as we all know, is a political third rail, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. I have no opinions on it. It's not my country. I'm not an isolationist, but I've grown increasingly wary of war. For a number of reasons that would warrant another video. The importance of this is Joe Rogan spoke in his defense. I believe he worked for MSNBC. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. Recently, when Joe Rogan was being attacked for spreading misinformation, David Pakman went on a corporate news media platform and shit on Joe Rogan. So if it seems like me using him as an example of what a bad actor in new media looks like, there's a reason for that. The other thing that stuck out. The other thing that stuck out as funny to me is the audio on David Pakman's side of the interview for this was absolutely terrible. Listen, I went and bought $100 microphone that looks like I'm talking into a robot pride thing. It doesn't matter because it works. And if you want to make fun of me for that, go right ahead. There's a comment section down below for things such as this. This man worked for corporate media. I'm here doing this as a hobby with a $40 microphone, and I'm sure my audio sounds orders of magnitude better than his. You don't have one friend that could come hook you up with some equipment they were going to throw out the back door?
So you would say over the last year that the focus hasn't been on identity through the Black Lives Matter riots and some of the reckonings that we've seen with regards to sort of gender identity and these crazy
I've never heard the term the Black Lives Matter riots before, other than when I think about the riots over the last year, I think of January 6th. Those are the riots really I remember. Black Lives Matter protests, I recall that there were no doubt some instances of destruction of property, which I wholeheartedly condemn and believe people should be punished for, right? Because I'm a law-abiding citizen. But I've never even heard them described as Black Lives Matter riots. They were overwhelmingly peaceful compared to, for example, January 6th. So I think, as you're saying, that may be reflective of where some of the news you're consuming.
Projection and confession through projection.
So I think you can see how I came to the conclusion that he may in fact be lying or covering for the corporate narrative at the time. Narrative whiplash is a thing, and I've experienced a lot of narrative whiplash lately, from both sides of the political aisle. More on that perhaps in another video. I'll carry on with my original thoughts. This was an add-in after the fact. Hopefully none of the edits are too jarring. I want to try and describe a different phenomenon. It's when people just aren't tuned to the right frequency. People like Bill Maher and Jon Stewart, I think they're principled, classical liberals. I think they're good people. I think they try and be honest to the best of their ability. Like I said, I have a problem when I go to anyone left of them for some sort of opinion or objective news source. I find that they lie frequently. I made a meme a couple weeks ago, reality has a left-wing bias, and it was the train in California that had been ransacked. The thing I run into is when you have these relics in the best possible sense of legacy media, they aren't terminally online like a lot of us, right? If I pulled up my watch time metrics for YouTube, I guarantee in the past month, I hate to imagine, but it's going to be a large number. And that is because I am struggling to cut through the nonsense of the bullshit and be informed. Politically, currently, I'm not sure where I lie. I'm somewhere between Michael Malice and Brett Weinstein and Heather Hine. I'm listening to Sagar Enjeti and Crystal Ball of Breaking Points interview Jon Stewart. And I thought it was a really good interview. I'm going to listen to it again after this, and if anything contradicts my opinion presented in this, then I'll edit it or annotate it. But the long and the short of it is, he had said that right-of-center media had changed its opinion because of their connections to Russia and religious fundamentalism or something along those lines. And I think if you're talking about corporate media, perhaps corporate media in the cathedral in general, I'm going to steal a quote from Michael Malice, want you dead but will settle for your submission. I genuinely believe that to be true. I believe these people do not represent us. They do not care about us. They do not have our best interests in mind. It is a group of very nefarious people that seek to shape and manipulate opinion to their own ends. I personally seek out independent content creators that seem to have their own opinions. I pay attention to them as they evolve and change over time. People like Russell Brand, Michael Malice, Tim Pool, Sagar and Crystal I think are good because they broke the chain to the hill. I don't always agree with them, but that's fine, I don't need to. Brett Weinstein and Heather Weinstein, are some of the kindest, most independent thinkers I've ever found on the internet. They have frequently been far ahead of the curve when it came to predictions about SARS-CoV-2, and frequently correct. And the powers that be seek to remove, censor, deplatform, demonetize, and debank people like them. We've seen this happen in Canada, and we're seeing it happen on a nationwide scale with Russia. That being said, I have no sympathy for the Russian government. I have sympathy for the conscript soldiers, their parents, their families, their grandmothers, and the children they'll never have. I have sympathy for the Ukrainian people. And frankly, I despise the fact that there's a strong potential that the man we elected to the Oval Office, whose son was getting paid $80,000 a month from a Ukrainian gas company, could have spurred this. In the same sense that when Barack Obama said to Donald Trump, if there's one thing you'll never be, it's president, he took that as a personal challenge and insult to his manhood and ran for president and won. In the same sense, when Biden sends his son over there and tries to out-gangster Vladimir Putin did what Vladimir Putin would do to someone that tried to out-gangster him. I've gotten a little off topic here, lost my original train of thought to what I wanted to say in this video, but I think the important thing is the content of legacy or corporate media will always be behind the curve as far as truth. The internet may be more frequently wrong, potentially, but it will lie less frequently depending on who you go to. Do you trust them? Trust is a currency, and like an investment, if it can be maintained over time, trust can grow. Let's say at a 3% APR. But if you tell a lie, you create an uncertainty in the market of trust. Corporate media has been lying to us for so long. And it's simply that the internet has been able to categorize all of these things and maintain them to compare and contrast and expose the contradictions. Not in the Hegelian way of accelerating the contradictions to inspire critical consciousness, but that's a story for another day. Please let me know if you thought this content was useful or helpful, or if it was the incoherent ramblings of a madman that spends too much time listening to the internet in his truck. Consider subscribing. Consider liking, consider sharing. I think I've gone on long enough, and I won't waste any more of your time. You have a good day.
What if I said, maybe we should just stop caring about that too, because the technological playing field for communication has been leveled so drastically that the New York Times and the legacy media types are basically dead in the water, and that's just going to play out like inevitably over the next 3 or 4 years. And let me give you just a quick example.
Can I just say one sentence?
Yes, please.
If they were dead in the water, the lockdowns couldn't have happened.
I don't think they're dead in the water now, but I think the writing's on the wall.
I agree. That's why I'm going to write a book called The White Pill, because I'm so optimistic. I think they're on borrowed time. Completely
Okay. So
agree.
then we can also talk about what happens next, and we can talk about the difference between podcasts and legacy media too, which I think I'm trying to think through right now, and because I think the YouTube podcast long form structure is revolutionary in all sorts of ways that we are just starting to understand. I was talking to Russell Brand a week ago, and he talked about voiceless people and how we're increasingly becoming voiceless. And I thought, well, wait a second, that's true in one sense, perhaps, but it's very untrue in another sense that might be more important, because now everyone's a TV station if they want to be, and everyone's a radio station if they want to be, and everyone's a publishing house if they want to be. It's right there at their fingertips. Sure. And there's no, apart from impediments that get thrown up now and then, like YouTube banning people and so on, it's if you want to have a voice, all you have to do is buy a $100 microphone and use your laptop, and bang, you have whatever audience you can draw in. Yeah.
There has never been a more true statement that I have heard. That being said, it's difficult to find quiet space to record things. Thank you for watching. I thought this was a very prudent clip to add. Credit to Michael Malice and Jordan Peterson. They had an excellent conversation. Link in the description below.